Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, is my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell. I'm excited. Another episode of the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. Another episode in person. Another episode in our fancy, super expensive studio. That we are definitely paying for.
It's crazy. I mean, somebody's paying for it.
Somebody is.
Yeah. Who? I don't know.
The U.S. government.
The U.S. government. We actually broke into Joe Rogan's podcasting studio. We're doing that. And then we're going to go ice plunge.
Yeah.
Have you ever ice plunged, Jake?
No, I would do it, though.
I wouldn't. It seems horrible.
That seems like it'd be kind of fun.
I'd give it a shot, but I would like... I don't think I'd like it very much.
I wouldn't do it, like, every day or something, but, like, just for fun, one time.
I don't know. I feel like my body would react poorly. I feel like I would be like that girl. I saw a video of a girl on YouTube. She did an ice plunge, and she was like, as soon as she lowered herself below her, like, belly button into the water, she shit her pants immediately.
Oh.
So
I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, me neither, but okay. I saw it happen, and I'm like...
Now it's going to happen to you.
Exactly. I see something
All you can think about is it can happen, and you're going to manifest it, too. Like, while you're happening, you're going to be like, don't poop, don't poop, don't poop, and then you're going to poop as soon as you touch the water.
Exactly.
As soon as your toe touches the water.
Really bad.
Just straight
It'd be like a bungee jump. Like, I know intellectually, if I bungee jumped, I probably wouldn't hit my head on the water and snap my neck and die, but there's always that fear in the back of your head. In the back of my head, at least. But you have a show.
Speaking of fear, our show today, Jump Scare Incorporated. This is going to be fun. Okay, so where do you think I'm going to go with Jump Scare Incorporated? What was your idea when you came up with this title?
My initial idea was kind of like a Monsters, Inc. Jake just spilled on himself. Monsters, Inc. sort of situation where you have like, or a Helpo situation, where you have like this very mundane, boring office like set, and it's got like boring, like normal people, and they have to kind of like, they are in charge of organizing like hauntings and horror movies and like slashers and psychos and stuff like that. And so it's like the juxtaposition of the mundane with the crazy like supernatural horror stuff, kind of like a Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Somewhat similar. I took this title and I'm doing a sequel series. You may remember, I don't know how many, maybe 20 episodes ago or something like that, I did a show called Haunt World.
Oh my God!
Which was a show about a show where they were like, they went to like, there's like these jelly people in spacesuits, right?
Yeah.
And they went to Earth, like, millions of years in the future, and Earth they think is like haunted. It's not actually really haunted, but it's sort of haunted. Mm-hmm. I mean, it basically is haunted. I don't know why I said it wasn't haunted. It is haunted. And they're like filming a show while like going through Earth and like seeing ghosts and other things. And it's it's silly because the narrator is like this old David Attenborough kind of guy who is just sort of like stumbling around this place, supposed to be talking about it, and he just seems like he's like a constant drunk, doesn't really know what's happening. He's there because he's famous and has a good voice, really, basically. Yeah. And they have like his fake sister because his brother dies in the first episode. And his brother was like sort of the real backbone of the show, but he dies right away in the first episode, so they pull up their fake sister as well, who's actually their second cousins. That's why it's not actually their sister, but in the show they say it is. And it sort of follows the fake sister and the producer like trying to get this show to work, and not everyone, dying. Silly show.
Yeah, fun comedy, if memory serves.
Fun, stupid show.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more like the TV show Supernatural, which I've never seen.
I know 7 seasons of Supernatural.
I have no idea what that show actually is like. So when I say that this is like Supernatural, I don't really mean that.
I just want to say I've never seen an episode of Mad Men. I've never seen an episode of Sopranos. I've only ever seen 1 season of Breaking Bad, but I've seen 7 seasons of fucking Supernatural. Each season's like 15 episodes. Each episode's like 40 minutes long. I've wasted so much time with Sam and Dean and Cass and Bobby.
Well, the similarities between those two, that show and this show, open up with our main people are 2 brothers. So we have James L. Haunt and Frank Y. Haunt, who are also the 2 brothers in the first episode of Haunt World. James L. Hunt being the David Attenborough stumbling, old, guy with a good voice, and Frank Y. Hunt was very cool, suave guy, but he dies in the first episode. Mm-hmm. This is a prequel series.
Oh, prequel series.
So they're younger.
They're very popular right now.
Yeah, everyone loves a good prequel. Mm-hmm. They don't. They're younger in this, so they're gonna be 30s, maybe early 40s, but around that area. James L. Hunt. So in the original show, old dithering man, good voice, drunk. In this show, still has a very good voice, David Attenborough style, narration, very crisp, clean. But instead, though, he's a very smart, science-y type guy. He's very intellectual, kind of like Reed Richards from Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. Not that smart, but kind of like that level.
Kind of aloof and smart.
Yeah, he's sort of the leader of the two brothers, and he doesn't believe that these monsters are real. He thinks there's always a scientific reason behind it. And now, remember, they're also jelly people in suits. Mm-hmm. So that's an important distinction.
That's an important element, because I've forgotten that for a second. I was casting them in my head, and I'm like, John Hamm is not a jelly man in a suit.
They're jelly men in suits. For the voice of James L. Hunt, I have picked either David Tennant or Matt Smith. So one of the two Doctor Who. And then Frank Y. Hunt, who you remember from the prequel series. He's very cool guy. He's still like that. Still very cool, daring, clever. But he's a little bit younger. He's not as experienced. He doesn't look sort of as grizzled. He's a jelly man, so how grizzled can a jelly man be?
Give him a 5 o'clock shadow. It'd be pretty impressive.
On the outside of the helmet. Frank Y. Hunt is either going to be played by Jensen Ackles or Henry Cavill.
So you're going all... Oh, Jensen Ackles. All right, I thought you were talking about Christopher Eccleston for a second, and I was like, you're doing Doctor Who all day.
No, not quite. So, again, James Hunt, David Attenborough, sciencey type. Frank Hunt, he's the cool... muscly type.
I think you should cast Henry Cavill as him, because then they're both British. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jensen Ackles. I don't think Jensen Ackles could do a British accent.
Probably not. So Frank and James, the two brothers. Again, this is a prequel series to Haunt World. This is a mystery show that's they're doing sort of a documentary, so they're filming stuff, but it's just them two. There's no crew or anybody else. Mm-hmm. Just following them, solving hauntings throughout the galaxy. Some notable side characters we have is Polio, who's an old haunting expert. He's played by Clancy Brown. Love some Clancy Brown.
Is he also a jelly man?
Yes, they're all jelly men.
Okay, they're all jelly men.
They're all jelly men. He does not like James. He's sort of Frank's mentor. Mm-hmm. Not a big fan of James. Then we have Livy. Livy is James's ex. Very meticulous mechanic, very organized, sarcastic. And then we have Ham, who's a reoccurring old woman who constantly is warning them about the Ides of March. Important though, Ham...
Weird to say March in space. Yeah, that they have March.
We'll get there. It'll make sense.
All right.
Ham, by the way, can only be seen by James. Frank never sees Ham, and James never mentions it to Frank.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see how you make an old woman a jelly person.
Yeah, I don't know either. This is for the animators to figure out.
Yeah.
Not for me. Then we have Victor Wanyama.
So that's the football player.
Yes, I told you that. I told him beforehand that one of these people is literally just going to be named after a soccer player. Yeah. Exactly. So Victor Wanyama. All right. He's a former Kenyan international. He also played for Spurs.
I thought that was your character, and I'm like, they have jelly men in Kenya? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, crazy. So he's a sort of shadowy figure who is out to kill them throughout the show. Mm-hmm. He's part of a group that's trying to bring the occult back into the galaxy, but we're not going to get a whole lot of clarification on what this group is or anything about them specifically throughout the show. There'll be some reveals, but it's not going to be too much. Because there might be a sequel show. We'll see. All right, then he's sort of a Lex Luthor type as well, but he's a little overly dramatic, he's theatrical,
He's probably got a big swooshing cape that he swooshes about when he's being dramatic and interesting, and some people make fun of him for his cape. James?
Just you. Maybe he wears a scarf backwards.
Oh, maybe he wears a scarf backwards. Very cool and hip and not lame. Actually.
Not lame at all. No one would ever think that is lame at all. The pilot. So we open with an epic space battle. They're flying through space. They're getting shot at by somebody else. James is piloting. Frank's on the gun. James is constantly complaining because the guys that are chasing him are from sort of some gambling debt that Frank has because he was beating some people at dice and he was doing too well. You know, like that's it's not that he doesn't owe them any money. He just didn't lose. He didn't lose, which he probably should have. You know, it's a tough kind of guys that you gotta let them win their money back.
You gotta let them win. But don't let them think you let them win, because then they'll beat you up.
So epic, a Star Wars style space scene at the beginning, like New Hope when Luke's on the Top Gun.
Yeah.
That kind
like
of fun
World War
stuff.
II gunner, thing. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But they end up getting damaged in the fight. So they win, but they end up getting damaged, and they have to sort of sputter along into this frontier planet in the middle of nowhere, in this frontier town. And they land just short of the town because they can't quite make the town's landing pad. And they're walking up to the town. They get up there, and it's this is the first time that James sees Ham, the old woman who's constantly mentioning the Ides of March, and she'll say, "Beware the Ides of March," and he just sees her and shakes his head and rubs his eyes, and she's gone. Now they go into the town. Frank wants to call Livy. He mentions Livy. We're not going to get a lot of clarification on who Livy is right now, but James is instantly like, "No, we're not calling Livy. I can fix it myself. I don't need anybody.
We don't need her. She's gonna slow us down."
Yeah, don't need Livy. Don't need to call her. We can go into this town. We can figure out, what they've got there. We can get their help. So they get into the town, but no one is there, and they're just walking around, confused. And then Frank will mention, like, I think I've read about this. There's all these frontier ghost towns from when the energy market imploded. They, all the resources they don't need to mine for oil anymore because they figured out how to create fusion reactors. So you don't need to worry about getting oil or coal or any other sort of resource.
And mining
like that.
Fusion is way easier.
You don't mine fusion. That's not
it's a joke.
Okay.
I'm allowed to make
sometimes I'm worried.
Worried I don't know what fusion is.
Sometimes I'm worried.
I mean, I don't, but I don't know. I know you don't mine it. Pretty sure.
So they're going through the town, nothing there. They're scouring through the place, and they start working on repairs in the ship. But the town's kind of nice, so they decide they're gonna instead of spending the night in the ship, which is hot and sweaty and damaged, they're gonna spend the night in the town, which still is fairly well kept. And so they go to an inn in the town. They both get their rooms, fall asleep, and in the morning when they wake up, the town is completely populated and full of people.
Ooh, that would be freaky.
And they get woken up by the the town's the inn's person, the person that's in charge of the inn. They're like, "Hey, it's your morning wake up call. Come on, breakfast." And they're like, "What?"
Huh?
Sort of groggy, just waking up, confused. We'll be following Frank for this part. James is already downstairs eating breakfast, and Frank's like, "James, what's going on here?" He's like, "Yeah, no, I'm." At first, James is gonna be kind of playing up as a joke, pretending like he thinks it's all normal, but then he's gonna go straight to "Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This is
weird
crazy.
as fuck." But they gave me food, so I'm not gonna
real bread.
Down.
He's gonna be because he's sciencey type. He's gonna be picking apart the bread, be like, It's real. No, I'm fairly certain this is real bread. It's no, there's people around here. Stop worrying about the fucking bread, James.
Doesn't matter.
Worry about all the people. Why are there people? There was no people before, and no one seems bothered at all. It's craziness. So they start walking out of the town, but they notice their ship is gone as well. So they're like, okay, we can't leave. We don't know why we're here. Let's just try to figure this out, I guess. So Susanna Wilkes is the innkeeper. And she's telling them about the town and how, what's going on and, the history and they're apparently still mining the resources. So okay. Mm-hmm. So they're not the fusion breakthrough. What about that? Why are you still, how is that? I thought,
Mm-hmm. That wasn't happening anymore. 'Cause
why is that not making it so your town isn't falling apart? And they eventually get the ear from them, and they find out that this is 70 years in the past.
Oh, no.
So somehow they're in the past, or at least this town thinks they're in the past.
Yeah.
And they're talking to everyone in town. Everyone thinks it's 7 years ago, and James and Frank are super confused. They don't know what's going on. And throughout the day, they're just trying to figure stuff out. And randomly, right before like around 10 or 11 o'clock. They're going back to the inn. And Susanna Wilkes is outside polishing the window when a piano falls and hits her in the head.
Oh, no.
And kills her.
Hilarious? Like in a funny way?
No,
or
just
we
like
supposed to be
brutally,
sad? Oh.
like, you're like, why did this happen? Like surreal. Like, why the fuck did a piano just fall and kill her? And they're like looking up and there's like nothing up there.
The
like,
buildings,
how does this make any sense?
The buildings aren't tall enough to have a piano fall from that at that speed.
Makes no sense. So like James goes over and he's like inspecting. He's interested in like looking at her because he's like, is she real? Are these robots? Maybe that could be it. Frank is like, he's essentially like full sheriff mode. Like he's trying to figure out like, you know, who just killed this lady? Like where'd that piano fall from?
Yeah.
They're going around as they're like, you know, James is doing his sort of sciencey stuff. Frank's doing like his investigative stuff. Eventually they'll go to the end, they'll fall asleep and they'll go to bed. And they, but they wake up like they're not like super. They can't fall asleep, and it's only like it just gets past midnight, and they both get up to like, you know, think and talk more about like what's going on, and they realize everyone in the town's gone. Everyone's not asleep; they're all gone, and they're looking outside and they're walking around the town again, and it's a complete ghost town again. So at night, this place is a ghost town again for some reason after midnight, and they go out of town and they see their ship. Their ship's back, so they're back in the present, and they'll discover that in the town when the sun goes up you go to the past, but it's a loop of the same day. So like if you're in they'll find out if you're in the town when the sun comes up, you essentially go back into the past and you're looping this day. But if you're outside of the town, you stay in the present. So James ends up taking a sort of scientific approach, and he sets up these beacons and scanners around the town. So he stays in the present, and he's, you know, setting up all this stuff, trying to find what's creating this sort of temporal issue around the town. Frank is full detective in the past, trying to solve the murder of Susanna Wilkes. So he thinks this is an occult thing. We have to solve this woman's murder. That's what he's thinking. He's sort of trained in the occult arts.
Hello, listeners. Sorry for the interruption, but it turns out the rest of this audio file was corrupted. So the sweet recording that Charles and I did is completely gone, or at least the back 20 minutes of it. Now, I could have probably just re-recorded this with Charles, but this is the day before this episode is supposed to come out, and Charlie is nowhere to be seen. So I'm just going to relay the rest of the story for you. Unfortunately, we won't have Charles' sweet comments and interesting insights that he had. You know, all these sweet ideas that added more to the story. Won't have them, unfortunately. I'm not really sure he had any, to be honest, but I don't really remember. That was a week and a half ago at this point. But anyway, James, Frank, uncovering the mystery of this town. Frank doing it in the sort of occult method. James, scientific approach. Frank is going to stay in the past, trying to actually solve the murder. He's going to be following leads, exploring the town, you know, chatting with the innkeeper and everyone around town to see who's got it out for Susanna Wilkes, the innkeeper. While James is going to stay in the future, scanning around town. He's setting up these like big beacon-like things, these big poles in the ground, lights flashing. He's got this little scanner in his hand. He's trying to figure out what is going on. He's discovered that there's some sort of energy source that's underneath the town that is causing this anomaly. And he's exploring around and he finds this cavern. And as he goes into the cavern, we cut back to the past where we see Frank going around. He's finally discovered that there's something sketchy going on with the sheriff. And he's going to uncover that the sheriff is the one that's actually killing Susanna. So he has this piano dropped on her from this cargo truck that flies over town. There's a lot of air traffic going over town at this point because this is sort of a middling frontier village that's, you know, full of industry and life. And so he's going to have this piano dropped off the back of it and to seem like an accident. That's, you know, nothing crazy going on, though the piano is quite ridiculous as a method to kill somebody. But the reason we're going to discover that he's doing this is because Susanna spots him forging a document so that he can sell off land permits under the town for these experiments to this corporation that's trying to uncover new methods of energy and technology. Now, James, as Frank is discovering this, is going under the caverns, deep under town. He's going to go facing all these threats and monsters, and dealing with these weird subterranean creatures. He's going to eventually discover, however, this crazy energy source that may or may not be from those very experiments from that corporation. And now he's getting like sucked into it. It's like a black hole pulling all this stuff, but it's like this very light, sparky element in the middle of this great cavern. And he's desperately trying to stabilize it using all of his scientific acumen, putting all these sensors down and shooting bolts at it and doing what he can, but he's getting sucked into it, and there's not much he can do. And he's holding on to a stalactite, desperately trying to, work as he's being forcibly thrown into this weird electrical black hole ball thing. While Frank, back in the past, is trying to solve the murder, and he finally gets the sheriff, and he has enough evidence, and he's going to put the sheriff away. He destroys the forged documents, saves Susanna Wilkes, and as he's doing this, James, at the very same time, we're cutting back and forth between these two moments, is able to stabilize the anomaly, or at least he thinks he does. And so, the reason we want this to happen is because I want each episode you to sort of feel like you're not sure who actually solved the problem. Is it Frank's occult sort of, going into the mystery methods? Or is it James's scientific approach? Is there really this magical time dilation issue? Or is it just a scientific anomaly? What is the truth? Is there magic or is it science? So one of the two, both maybe, who knows? Anyway, that's going to be the kind of the premise of each episode. So we'll have a satanic or demonic murder in the Galactic Senate. So they're going to go to the big Galactic Senate building, and they're going to get ushered in secrecy. Everyone's going to be really casual and bureaucratic about this. And there's going to be this nice sort of very poised, probably British-speaking, British-accented gentleman who's going to very calmly bring them through the chambers and bring them up to the upper rooms of the Galactic Senate House and bring them into this office, and everything seems nice. Maybe they get some nice wine or something along the way, and they enter this room, and it's just a completely horrific scene full of blood and guts and strewn apart body parts. It's just going to be absolutely terrible with these weird symbols scrawled and blood and dirt on the walls. And James and Frank, they've seen a lot, but they're going to be horrifically disgusted, especially the dichotomy of this terrible scene mixed with like the beautiful scenery and the poise of the Senate House. So they're going to have to solve this murder. And now, while Frank is going to think immediately, of course, there's an evil demon. That's the only possibility. James is going to think that, okay, somebody is doing something. They're playing with, the air or something, and that there's something that somebody's out for some sort of nefarious method to kill this senator. He can't explain exactly what they're doing, but he knows that there's somebody behind this. It can't just be, magic. And of course, they're going to find out that the Senate House was built on this ancient burial ground. And the reason, at least that Frank thinks that there was the murder, was because they recently passed a bill that contravenes the law of these old people, the old people that are buried under the Senate House that no longer exist and were gone well before the Senate House even existed or the people moved to this planet. A very simple law, probably like, we're going to allow people to drink water from the sink. Yes, sink water drinking, and that is against the law, the religious beliefs of these people that are buried underground. So they're going to murder the senators. At least that's what Frank thinks. Now James is completely convinced that the senator was murdered by one of his rivals. And by the end of the episode, it's kind of going to seem like both are equally plausible instances, and both maybe are true. It's kind of confusing. Maybe this senator was using an ancient ritual to rise the dead, and that's what Frank thinks. But James is like, he just cut him to pieces. That's all there is. Another idea I had was an asteroid mining station haunted by a flesh-eating, boredom-eating ghost. So what I mean by that is that there's going to be this invisible ghost that will preys on people that are bored. And if you're bored, it will start like just nibbling away at your flesh. So the idea is that for Frank, he's going to think that this is this old foreman that was always, really hard on his workers and wanted them always to work extremely hard and didn't want anyone to be lazy. So if you're bored, you're being lazy. So it's going to, eat away your flesh so you'll work. James, on the other hand, is going to be like, this is clearly just a crazy microbe alien that we've got to contain and destroy. So it'll be kind of like a Ghostbustery episode where they'll lock it in this little vacuum cleaner-like thing and dispel it into space. Another episode idea was throughout the season, Wanyama is going to be haunting them as well. As they're trying to unravel the through line between all these different hauntings, and they'll eventually track this connection down to an ancient temple on a planet called Marsh. So the old lady that's constantly telling them to beware the Ides of Marsh. She's not saying March, she's saying Marsh. So they'll fight Wanyama, and they'll manage to get into this temple, and the door will close, so only James gets through. And as James gets through, Frank is going to get captured. So James is going through the temple trying to find his brother. He doesn't realize his brother has been captured as well. He just knows he's somewhere else in the temple. James is going to continue on until he gets into a room with 1,000 closed eyes. This big flesh-like room, flesh and stone. It's going to be all sort of connected and intertwined in this horrific sort of medley. I say horrific, but it's not. It almost fits very well with the scenery. Like, it doesn't seem terrible. It's like maybe some of the imagery might seem horrific, but it's not. It's all very nice and linear and connected. And so James, he's going to walk into this big room with all these closed, stony, fleshy eyes, and they're all at the same time going to open. And we're going to cut to the outside of the room, and he's going to scream. And that is where the show is going to end. So, now, this was a prequel show. So this is set before the events of Haunt World, my sort of light, fun show with James as this crazy drunk guy and his second cousin. They're going to go around, an old ancient Earth and to uncover monsters and different hauntings and such. But of course, now I'm not going to pitch this show because I don't know, I don't feel like it. But there will be a sequel show to this now, which will be where we will reveal that the eyes stole Frank's soul. So James's soul. So in this moment, James's soul was stolen, and that's why he's this crazy shell of a human being in Haunt World. And Frank was captured and replaced. So that Frank that dies in the first episode of Haunt World is not the real Frank. He's this agent, this guy who's, just trying to, the handler of James to make sure he doesn't remember anything about what happened. And so the sequel show will be about Sal and James trying to get back Frank and defeating this hidden occult society. So that was Jump Scare Incorporated. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry that Charles couldn't finish out the episode with us. I'm not really sure what happened to the audio file, but you got the gist. It was fun. Make sure to join us next week for another episode of the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. Make sure to tune in with us next week where Charles is going to be pitching a new show called No Fear, No Limits, No Equal. Hope you enjoyed today's episode and have a very nice evening.